Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle, and I am joined by my two co-hosts, Michael Hall and Michael Reed. The Burgundy Zone is a part of the Frederick Podcast Network. You can find out more by going to www.listenfrederick.com, but we are rejoined by the best from PFF, Mr. Trevor Sikkema, Tampa Bay Trey on all the social media sites. How are you doing on this fantastic Friday, Trevor?
Oh, guys, I'm doing wonderful. The 2022 NFL Draft is in the rearview mirror. We finally get to talk about these prospects actually being a part of teams now instead of just, well, if they go to this spot, which has been great. I'm enjoying the summer content already so far in that regards, and I'm sure you guys are too. So I appreciate you having me on the show.
Of course. And then the schedule release just came out last night. The Washington Commanders are opening the season up against the Jaguars. So kind of talk to us about the Jaguars in that matchup, Trevor. What do you think of that? And what does Washington have to be concerned about heading into week one?
Well, I think the thing that they have the most to be concerned about is the fact that Jacksonville has a competent head coach now, right? I mean, like, it was an absolute circus last year with Urban Meyer and everything that was going on there. And it was clearly never going to work out. So I'm glad that they realized that early and moved on. And now they replace Urban Meyer with a head coach who has won a Super Bowl before, and Doug Peterson. So I think it's going to be huge for Trevor Lawrence's progression. I think that they certainly infused themselves with a lot of high ceiling talent in this past draft. Not sure if it pays off right away, especially week one, but look, I don't think the Jags are going to be this pushover like they normally are. I really don't. I think they've got a good head coach in place. I think he's going to have that team about as ready as they possibly can be. And I think Trevor Lawrence is about to take a big step up this year. So even though the Jags are far from being a playoff team, far from being a complete team, it's an interesting matchup for the Washington Commanders because it could be a much different looking Jags team this year. It's not this, easy dub. Like, there's no question about it. They're going to win this game. I think Jacksonville is going to put up a little bit more of a fight than people are giving them credit for.
Yeah, now, do you think that Carson Wentz at all could maybe help with some insight into Doug Peterson's offense, or do you think it's going to be completely different than when his days in Philadelphia?
No, I'm sure that there's a little bit of that, right? I mean, I'm sure that an element of that exists when coaches go to different spots, when they get raises or when they get promotions from position coaches to maybe like offense coordinators or whatever. Like, anytime you leave to go to a different team, you're then trying to help the team in whatever chance that you can. So, if you'll remember as well, Carson Wentz, infamously, I'll say, lost to the Jaguars at the end of last year. That was the reason why the Colts didn't make the playoffs. And so maybe he's got a couple of notes in what needs to go better from what happened the last time that he met the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I'm sure there's a little bit of that, as there is with anybody who kind of switches sides around the league.
Right. And don't worry, we're not going to ask you all scheduled questions, but I do have one because the very next game, I think, is another very interesting team that people are sleeping on against the Detroit Lions. Detroit is a team that's done a fantastic job drafting over the last few years. It seems like they may be a quarterback away or so from being a very good young team. Is that another trap game for Washington? And what does Detroit kind of bring to the table?
Yeah, it's, this year, for as much as you might want to look at these teams who are, they're not going to compete for playoff spots. I don't think it's going to be like it was last year where it's just like, okay, these teams are embarrassingly bad. And even the Lions, who didn't rack up a lot of wins, they still look competent. They still had a lot of fight in them. They just clearly didn't have the roster where it needed to be. So you're hoping that with new talent there and guys getting familiar with what Dan Campbell's got going on in Detroit, certainly guys like Aiden Hutchinson, Jameson Williams, once he gets on the field, that's going to help immensely for them. But again, like, I don't want to call it a trap game. They're just not going to be pushovers like they were last year. You're not looking at these two teams thinking, oh, Washington opens up the season against the teams that earned the number 1 and number 2 overall draft picks last year. Where that is a fact, I don't think these teams are just going to be absolutely terrible. Again, like, you could just pencil in 2-0. Maybe I think they'll be favored against both of these teams, but it's going to be closer, I think, than people are giving them credit for, especially since I was looking up kind of predictions for Washington's schedule and what people have been saying, preparing for this show here with you guys. And a lot of people are just like, yeah, 2-0 easy after these first 2 weeks. It's like, okay, maybe that's most likely, but I don't know. Don't get too ahead of yourself now.
Right.
These teams, I think, are going to be a lot better this year.
And I think
Real
the
fast.
Lions
Oh,
last season, I think they lost like a bunch of close games. So like they were in a lot of those games.
Right.
And real fast, just imagine real fast the Lions with Jamison Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown and TJ Hawkinson and DeAndre Swift and that good young offensive line adding like a Bryce Young or a CJ Stroud.
Right.
All of a sudden, that offense has got a lot of potential.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of sticking with the schedule, this obviously it's May, but looking ahead to September and beyond. I'm sure whenever the schedule comes out, everyone was just like I did, went through every game, was kind of like, oh, win, loss, win, loss. And a lot of people have Washington between that 9 to 10, maybe possibly 11 if everything falls in place for them. So where do you kind of rank the Commanders as far as the NFC goes? Obviously, they added Jahan Dotson to this offense as well. And there's going to be a lot of ifs in here, like if the defense bounces back and plays well, if Curtis Samuels stays healthy, things of that nature. So where do you got the Commanders ranked right now?
Yeah, I think that, 10 wins is within the realm of possibility for them. I think they're definitely not to like be a damper on hope for them, but they're definitely at the point where they're a team that you kind of need to prove it, right? You need to kind of like see it to believe it almost. Not that they were terrible, but right, like we went into last year thinking, okay, this is going to be a top 5 defense in the league, even though they don't have a dominant quarterback. They got a lot of good playmakers, and it was a disappointing year in that regard. So I think that a lot of people who would have faith in Washington to get close to or hit that double-digit win mark are even them, it's kind of like, okay, like let's see it to believe it almost. But that's certainly there. I mean, when you look at the strength of schedules, just based off of the win losses from the year before, I believe the Commanders have the 31st easiest schedule, 30th or 31st easiest schedule.
Them and Cowboys are tied with the
right. Okay, so it's the Cowboys with the easiest schedule in the NFL. So they have a lot of things that are going for them there. Certainly, they're hoping that they upgraded in quarterback with Carson Wentz. And guys, really late bye week this year.
Yeah.
So
14.
You look at their schedule, and it's not like they have this massive like road streak either. I think the area where they play the most games on the road, I don't know what weeks these are, but I'm just looking at the dates. November 14th through December 1st, there is a 4-week stretch right there where they go at Philadelphia, which is big, of course, because it's Carson Wentz's return to Philadelphia, at Houston, versus Atlanta, at the New York Giants. And I believe that's like their longest and toughest road stretch of the schedule. The rest of it is pretty easy with like home, road. And then they get the bye week immediately after that. So not only are you not really playing tough teams in your biggest road stretch, they've got a bye all the way in December. That's what you want, especially for a team that if you think they're about to have a chance to make the playoffs, which in the NFC, anything could happen. If you get close to that 10-win mark, you have a chance to sneak into the playoffs there, probably as a wild card team. You've got a bye week there, and then it's 4 games. It's home versus the Giants. Okay, at San Francisco, that's tough. Versus Cleveland, they're probably going to have Deshaun Watson back at that point, so that's tough. But then it's versus Dallas. You're hosting Dallas as well. So it's a pretty favorable schedule for the Commanders. It really is. So I think that there is a chance where they could get close to that 10-win mark like people were projecting.
You read my mind, Trevor, because that was my next question for you. Was Week 14 the bye for Washington? I think it's actually a blessing. Is it weird that maybe the Giants, they play the Giants, then the bye week and face the Giants again after that? Yes, but I also think it's genius because that allows the Commanders more time to be able to look up the Browns, to look up the Cowboys and the 49ers in that bye week because they don't have to pregame. They don't have to game plan for the Giants because they just played them the week before.
They do got to stop the Hall of Famer Daniel Jones.
That's true.
Because he does tear us up every game. He's a Hall of Famer against us.
In that breath, does that make you feel better about that bye week?
Yeah, I mean, like I already felt good about the bye week. You want a later bye week, and I'm trying to look up. Okay, so the Giants, they play Washington, and then Washington has a bye, but the Giants play the Philadelphia Eagles. So it's like, okay, divisional opponent for they play Dallas before that. So they have 4 divisional games in a row. I didn't realize that. Giants do. And then right in the middle of that is when Washington has their bye week. So that only helps them out. Plus, you want a later bye week. That's absolutely what you want. Week 14, that's about as late as it gets. And some might say like, okay, we might rather have like a week 12, but still you'd rather have it late in the season than early because late in the season is when guys start to get fatigued, when guys start to get injured, and you want to be as healthy as possible when you're really finishing strong, hopefully, and then getting into the postseason too. So I think that schedule-wise matched up against how the Giants schedule matches up, and then also just the fact that your guys can get healthy in December with an extra week off, that's what you love. And hold on, I'm pulling their schedule back up here. Okay, so it's at the New York Giants, but then it's home. They're hosting the Giants.
Yep.
So, it's not like normally it's kind of like, okay, you got a bye week and then you're probably going on the road for a lot of these teams. This is also favorable for Washington because they travel back from New York, which is not a far plane trip, right? And then they get that next week off and they get to stay in Washington for 2 straight weeks to really heal up before they head out to San Francisco. So I really do. I think that not only is the strength of schedule there from a win-loss perspective, I think the strength of schedule is there for Washington for how it shaped up too.
Yeah, now let's look at it in detail, Trevor. What is your favorite matchup as just a football fan in the Commander's schedule?
I mean, you got a handful here that I think are going to be interesting, right? Everybody's going to point to the October 30th matchup against the Indianapolis Colts, right? What's going to happen when Carson Wentz returns to Indianapolis? Can he really put it on his old team there? And then 2 weeks later after that, he's going back to Philadelphia. So it's a divisional opponent. He'll get Philadelphia home and away. But I think those two homecomings, if you will, within a 3-week stretch is very, very interesting. And then you go... That's also part of that 3-game road stretch that I brought up, because that would also be the part of the schedule that I would point to, where they're at Philadelphia, at Houston versus the Atlanta Falcons, and then at the New York Giants. So those two things, to me, that middle of the season is where we'll really find out how good or how legit of a chance Washington has to be a playoff team. Because if Carson Wentz can get over the, I don't want to say, what do I call it? Like, I don't want to. I don't want to say like mental hurdle. I was kind of trying to come up with something different, but like, it's an emotional game when you go, no matter what, when you go back to a team that you used to play for. So those emotional games, if he can play well versus Indianapolis in Indianapolis versus Philadelphia in Philadelphia, those two are massive. You've got the road stretch there, and then you hit that bye week. If they can hit that bye week with good momentum and a lot of faith in what their team is doing, they can finish strong. And like I said before, they could potentially hit that double-digit win mark.
Right. Yeah. And when you look at the schedule, I mean, as you mentioned, like this middle part is kind of tough. I mean, you start with week 3 against Philly, then you have Dallas, then you have the Titans, then there's the Bears, and there's Green Bay, the Colts, Vikings, and then Eagles again. So that one team that kind of sticks out in there is the Chicago Bears. That's, of course, a primetime matchup in Chicago at Soldier Field. What have the Bears, like when you really look at this team, like I always think of the Bears and yeah, they got Justin Fields, and yeah, they've had some historically great defenses, but they really haven't done much. Like they have not surrounded Justin Fields with weapons at all.
Darnell Mooney is their wide receiver 1.
Right. Yeah. I mean, what does Washington really have to worry about? What can the Bears look forward to this season?
I mean, they've got a bunch of primetime games when they don't deserve it, I guess. I mean, Chicago fans are just going to have a chance to watch their team on primetime when they really don't deserve it. I don't know. I don't have a lot of faith in Chicago Bears this upcoming season. I would understand what Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus are doing if it truly is this multi-year rebuild thing. You know, they looked at how they took Kyler Gordon and they took Jaquan Brisker with their first 2 selections, right, passed on offensive line up until they picked Braxton Jones, I think in the 4th or 5th round. And it's like, all right, the offensive line's not where it needs to be to protect Justin Fields. His offensive weapons aren't where they need to be for him to be effective there. The run game, certainly you're hoping that you can lean on David Montgomery, but how much can he do behind that offensive line? So it's one of those situations where Chicago looks like they're in a multi-year rebuild. They're not that big of a threat. So, you know, bringing it back to Washington's angle for it, it's essentially Matt Eberflus turning that defense into an elite defense immediately, which is kind of a projection anyways, because they moved on from Khalil Mack and they moved on from a couple of other key defensive players. And then if Fields doesn't play hero ball,
right,
who's beating you? Like, that's the thing. It's the Chicago part is just so perplexing to me, because unless Ryan Poles, the new general manager there, like unless they hit offense really heavy, they're confident that they're going to be able to sign a couple of wide receivers and sign some offensive linemen and draft the same kind of players and the same personnel that I just mentioned there, you're wasting Justin Fields' rookie contract. Right. And I unfortunately think that even with the primetime games, including the one against Washington, there is not enough juice on this team to really help Justin Fields beat some of the better caliber teams in the NFL. We'll see if that Washington's one of them.
Right. Real fast. It's just crazy to me that they literally didn't do anything to really help Justin Fields out this season.
Nuts, man. It
was a big wide receiver class too.
Exactly. And yeah,
Hey, I remember the days when Washington was
Yeah,
making.
seriously.
I guess we can't really talk.
So yesterday I was randomly doing some things, turned the TV on, the NFL live, and they just so happened to be talking about the NFC East and kind of looking forward towards the schedule release. And Mr. RG3 is on the TV, and he comes out with the comment saying that Washington could be one of those possible sleeper teams for a Super Bowl contention. And obviously, Twitter went crazy. The whole world probably went crazy at that point. So, kind of, what is your reaction to those comments? And could you see if everything kind of lines up and falls in place? Could you see Washington maybe making one of those Cincinnati Bengals type kind of wild, crazy runs?
Yeah, I
It's a
mean, like,
tryout.
look, like you can
I love
convince
RG3, right?
you can convince yourself of it, right? Because you say to yourself, Carson Wentz had an MVP season before he got hurt and before they won the Super Bowl, right? You figured that if he was able to play throughout that season, there's a good chance that they win the Super Bowl anyways. Maybe not. I mean, momentum and sparks and everything goes into it, but Carson Wentz was playing as one of the best players in the NFL the year he got hurt, which they happened to win the Super Bowl. So you could say that. You can go back to what I said earlier in the podcast where I said last year, we thought this Washington defense could have been a top 5 defense in the NFL. And you go, okay, well, if they bounce back a little bit from that, even if they're just a top 10 defense in the NFL, or if they hit that ceiling of top 3, top 5, then you're in contention there. You think, okay, well, if Jahan Dotson and if Curtis Samuel can be a role, if you use Antonio Gibson the way that you want to, you've got the tight end usage as well. Terry McLaurin's obviously Terry McLaurin. Like, there is reason to believe that if everything goes right, Washington would have a hell of a football team. But I'd pump the brakes a little bit on a Super Bowl there, especially because Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers and the defending Super Bowl champions are still in the NFC. So can Washington be a fun team, make the playoffs, maybe be a dangerous wild card team? That I would believe a lot more than saying the word Super Bowl with Washington quite yet.
Look, I love the Commanders. I love the kind of energy that RG is bringing, but it's obvious he's trying out for something. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but he's doing a good job at
He
it.
wants a roster spot.
Now, to wrap this up, Trevor, got a couple more questions for you. But the offense, what is your prediction for offensive rookie of the year, general NFL, and defensive rookie of the year, and then quarterbacks? Which of these quarterback class, who do you think will have the most productive career at the end of it?
Ooh, productive career. Dude, I don't. There's so much uncertainty with these quarterbacks that I don't even know how, because it's like, when are they going to start? Are they going to start? Like, is Kenny Pickett even going to beat out Mitchell Trubisky? Like, is Desmond Ridder going to beat out Marcus Mariota? Is Ryan Tannehill going to hang on to the fact that, like, Malik Willis never kind of really gets in there? Obviously, you guys have Sam Howell in Washington, and I like Howell. I think that he could be potentially a nice starting quarterback for you guys if Carson Wentz doesn't work out. So, man, that question is just so difficult. And honestly, me putting a name on it would simply be me closing my eyes, having all 5 of them in front of me, and just throwing a dart, because it is. None of them are really in positions to start relatively soon outside of Kenny Pickett. And I don't have a lot of faith that Kenny Pickett's going to last a really long time in this league. I just don't know if he has the physical attributes to do so. I would love to be proven wrong, because I hope that that's the case with any of these guys that I doubt. I always want them to play their best. But this quarterback class is going to be tough. In terms of, like, rookie of the year,
offensive and defensive.
Yeah, I think that Drake London even after the Brian Edwards trade, I still think that Drake London is going to get an insane amount of volume as long as he's healthy. So I think that him getting a lot of the targets in Atlanta, just from volume alone, he is going to have such a strong case at that. Kenneth Walker's another one who he is not a favorite, but I think he presents the best bet, if you will, because Chris Carson, dude, he might not play. Like, that neck back injury is not great. Rashad Penny's never been able to stay healthy a full year. Kenneth Walker's going to come in right away, and he might be RB1, man. And this is a team that's going to run the ball after Russell Wilson. So I think that those two guys are two that I like there. Defensive player of the year. Who's going to get sacks? That's the question. Maybe Jermaine Johnson, if he gets some one-on-ones with Carl Lawson coming back. I think that he's going to be a candidate to potentially win it. Kayvon Thibodeau, certainly, if that defensive line. I mean, I know they got Leonard Williams as well. They have
Dexter Lawrence.
No, yeah, Dexter Lawrence. Yes, they do. But like
Mhm.
the other edge rusher from Georgia.
Ojulari.
Ojulari. Aziz Ojulari. So like they already have a defensive line where Kayvon Thibodeau might not get doubled. He might get a handful of sacks as well. Certainly Aiden Hutchinson with as much momentum as he's coming into the league with. I think that those are probably the guys. It's going to be, to me, whoever leads the league in sacks with a really great edge group that came in this year. So that's kind of my long answer to all that.
Yeah, and then the offensive rookie of the year and everything like it, that's going to be, it's really weird because there's not a quarterback that really stands out, right? That you could say is going to be like, so it's going to be weird with these offensive rookie of the year because it very well could be a wide receiver to your point, Trevor. I can't thank you enough for joining us, brother. If you guys aren't following Trevor already, make sure you go follow him on Instagram, on Twitter at Tampa Bay Trey. I can't thank you enough, brother. You've done great work with Pro Football Focus. I can't thank you enough for taking some time out for us, Trevor.
Oh, man, it means the world. I appreciate the kind words there. And anytime you guys want to talk ball, I'm always down. I appreciate you guys having me.
Yes. I appreciate you, Trevor. Enjoy your weekend, sir.
Have a good one, buddy.
Thank you,
All right, brother. All right, everybody. We just spoke with the man, Mr. Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus. I remember when he was at Draft Network.
I was just about to say, that's where I remember him from. And so doing big things, man. Look at him, man, climbing up the ranks.
Logan Paulson saying that Julie Donaldson was like, "Oh, I saw you in the Burgundy zone." Trevor Sikkema comes on the Burgundy zone. He goes to the PFF.
Yeah,
we're just uncovering gems out here. What can I say?
Touch of gold.
Pretty sure we had nothing to do with Trevor Sikkema's success.
I don't know, man. It's almost like we're a scout under Bill Belichick and Bill Parcells, and we're just finding everybody.
Why? But before we are joined by our next guest, let's answer some fan questions here. And the first one's going to be from the Colonel, and I'll go to you first, Hall. RG3 is stating on ESPN the Commanders are in win-now mode. Is this true, or are we rebuilding? He even predicted that we are sleeper Super Bowl possibilities.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that we're rebuilding. Obviously, if they were rebuilding, they would have just held back on the Carson Wentz trade and kind of – Ron Rivera even mentioned that he liked one of the rookies in this class, and I guess that would have been the route that we would have tried to take. So I definitely don't think this is a rebuild. Obviously, they didn't do a lot in free agency due to the Carson Wentz thing. But it just kind of seemed like even in the draft, they were kind of filling roles that were needs as far as like right now, but also needs for the future going forward, just in case they lose guys, which signifies to me that they're not in a rebuild mode and they're kind of win now mode. And I mean, if you like I said, you listen to Ron's comments all throughout the offseason, year 3 is when you take that step. So even he thinks it's win now mode as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think I've always thought this was a renovation. Like basically they are rebuilding like not a rebuild essentially, but they are keeping pieces in place that they think are sustainable and then building on top of that. And so no, I don't think that they're in rebuild anymore. I think it is win now, especially given with the schedule that they are facing. Because I really believe in this team that they have got to where they are supposed to be. Ron Rivera I know Dre talked about this on Twitter, and he's so right. Last season, Ron Rivera, this offseason, Ron Rivera continued to say, temper your expectations, still a young team. He would send these signals basically saying to calm down. Jack Del Rio and the staff, they're talking differently now, especially in this offseason. They have confidence in this football team, and I think that they are ready to go. I think it is a win-now mode. I would chill out a little bit on the Super Bowl. I would love to be able to go compete in the Super Bowl, but a lot has to happen in the NFC for that to be able to be true, and one being is that Carson Wentz has to stay healthy, and so does his football team. Injuries derailed them last season, took them completely out of it. They would have had a lot of chances to compete in this division, but the injuries took them out, and health is the biggest concern. That's why I'm kind of trepidatious about the whole Super Bowl talk. If they're healthy, then sure. But generally, the Super Bowl is the most healthy team at the end of the year. What do you think, Reed?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you guys. I mean, like, thanks a lot, Cincinnati Bengals, making people think that dumpster fire franchises have a chance to go to the Super Bowl every year now. Thanks for that. No, but hey, we know how talented they are. There's a reason that we were high on them last year. I think that they've only improved this year. I mean, yeah, of course they lost some key pieces, but I think overall as a team, they're in a better position. And as we know, last year, I mean, people want to say it was a down year. They had such a tough schedule and they still finished the way that they did, still had 7 wins again. They really can only go up from here. Are they going to be a Super Bowl team? I don't know, but hey, like you said, all it takes is one team getting hot at the end of the year. So, hey, we can dream, a man can dream.
Let's go to our Discord chat server for our next question. This is from Andy Lockhart in the UK. Oi!
Oi!
Reed, what record do you think that we will have after week 4? So we open up against the Jaguars on September 11th, and then next game is the Detroit Lions, obviously. After that, we face the Eagles at home and then travel for week 4 going to Dallas. to play the Cowboys. So what do you think the record will be after week 4?
So like we talked about, I mean, you look at the schedule originally, you think that it's going to be kind of easy, like the first 2 games, but I mean, those aren't cakewalks, but I do think that after week 4, I do think we could be 3-1. I mean, it's going to be tough, but like, I mean, those first 2 games we should win. I think that we are more talented as long as we come up fired, ready to play. And you got to think, hey, if we're 3-1 after week 4, after that, Ron Rivera is going to get these guys up to play every game, because then you keep rolling. Then you have a realistic shot at 4-1, 5-1, and then you keep going before that tough stretch of the schedule. I think we'll be 3-1 after the first 4 weeks with a loss to Dallas. So we might even start 3-0, baby.
Now, this team would absolutely love that, to be able to start undefeated in that breath. I do think 2-2 is probably the most realistic aspect to this, and because somebody on Twitter yesterday, I forgot, bless his heart, I forgot his name, but he brought up the fact of the going against in home openers in opening of the season, going against rookie head coaches, and we've seen that here in Washington, how bad that goes for us. And so that is a concern for me, and I do think that the Jaguars could maybe catch us by surprise, kind of like the Chargers did last season, but hopefully they change stuff up a little bit. And I just think that one of those 2 games is one of those that's like, it's just going to get away from you, just because I'm trying to be realistic here.
Yeah.
You know, I would love to be able to start 4-0. I think they're very capable of doing so. We saw that last season, and especially given the difficulty of the schedule, but I do think they can go 4-0, but I just think as a fan, I'm trying to talk myself down a little bit. I think 2-2 is probably the most realistic.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think 2-2 is definitely the most realistic thing. 3-1 is definitely like a hopeful option, just because, like you said, I mean, we're 6-1 overall against the Jaguars and the whole Washington history and their whole Jaguar history. But like you said, rookie head coaches coming into Washington always have trouble with that. So I do definitely think that between the Jaguars and Detroit, as much as I want to think that like we've taken that kind of turn around the corner where
They got to prove it.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, as much as I want to say that, like, they're the team now that they beat up on the bad teams and like week in and week out, like good teams do. But I just still think that they're going to take their lumps here and there. Carson Wentz obviously still getting acclimated. So I definitely think between the Jaguars and Detroit, we might drop one of those games. And I definitely think that I'd say we beat Dallas week 4. So I'll say 2-2 with a loss to Philly and a loss to either the Jaguars or Detroit. But we bounce back and we get another division win against the Cowboys in week 4. So 2-2, possibly 3-1.
And let's be real. The Jaguars and Lions, they are a lot better than people make them out to be. I mean, obviously, they're not going to be the top 2 picks this year. I can almost guarantee that. Those teams have built themselves fantastically. And Trevor Lawrence, watching what he did last year, if you actually go back, I know his stats suck, but if you go back and actually watch his game tape, Trevor Lawrence, man, he made some unbelievable throws. And now that he's going to have Doug Peterson, who's a quarterback guru, the improvements they made, they're not a pushover anymore. They're not going to get the number 1 pick again. So both those teams are very fun.
Yeah, but look in their wide receiver core. I mean, they got Zay Jones starting, Marvin Jones, and Christian Kirk, who they just paid for in free agency.
Those are 3 solid receivers.
Yeah, they're solid.
There's no world beaters.
They're not world beaters by any stretch, and that's my whole point. Is that yes, it is winnable, but they're
solid.
Yeah, they are solid.
They're getting
and then
there.
They added Trayvon Walker and Devin Lloyd, obviously, in the first round this year on defense. So they're trying to build up that aspect. That's where you can really beat them. And then the Lions, they're starting DJ Chark, and then Jamison Williams most likely will not be there for week 2. If he is, maybe he won't be his actual self. And then they have Amon-Ra St. Brown and then TJ Hawkinson as well, obviously.
Yeah.
So
a good young offensive line and DeAndre Swift. I mean, Jared Goff's really going to be the make or break for them on that offense.
Yeah. And also, honestly, both those games, they come down to what is the defensive line going to do? If the defensive line can dominate like they did 2 years ago and like they're supposed to be dominating, then obviously we're going to eat Trevor Lawrence and Jared Goff up for breakfast. But if they kind of have that lackluster start to the season like they did last year, I could definitely see both of those guys carving us up, and we start 0-2, to be honest with you.
I mean, and yeah, we've had our struggles in Detroit of recent memory. I will just say that. So
the one thing against the Jaguars I want to be so adamant about with this team, especially defensively, is to not be so what's the best way to put it? Is being cookie cutter, because I felt like the Chargers last season, they knew exactly what we were going to be in defensively. Hall, I remember watching that game with you, and it was like literally they knew exactly what we were in. They knew when we were in zone. They would run these quick outs, and they would just get the ball out and move the ball downfield. And it was so aggravating because they knew where all the outlets were. So I would like to go in against week 1 to mix things up a little bit, to be able to screw with the offensive mind, especially Doug Peterson, so he's not getting stuff that he's not expecting. But now we are joined by our next guest, our guy, Mr. Ian Cummings of PFN365. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Friday, Ian, and coming back from vacation for the Burgundy Zone. Man.
Yeah, man, it's good to be here, man. I'm always happy to hop on. You know, I had a little vacation after the draft, you know, a few days, but as you know, if you're a draft analyst, you got to get right back into it after a few days. So that's kind of how it's been, man. You know, I had a good time in Wisconsin. One of my buddies is getting married soon, so we went over there. That was a hype time for sure. But had to come back at some time. Had to start, you know, getting back on the regular diet routine right after drinking a little bit too much out there. But it was a lot of fun. I'm even more happy to get back into the draft, the scouting process, because there's so much to cover for next year already.
Yeah, Ian, I can just see you over there pumping weight in the film room. You know, like I'm sure that's what you do with working out. But let's talk about this draft and recap, Ian. I want to talk to you about Jahan Dotson at 16. Talk to us about that prospect. What did you think of him and the fit with Washington?
Yeah, so I think it felt like a little bit of a reach to me, but here's my thought process with a lot of these picks, right? Like even if it's a big reach on my board, there's always an outcome where the team makes it worth it, right? So I'm never going to bag on a team if they take a guy higher than I would have taken him, because, hey, we could be looking back in 3 or 4 years and this guy's a Pro Bowler, right? So, you know, as a draft evaluator, I think one of the most important rules is to be open to all the potential outcomes that are there, right? So I think with Jahan Dotson, if you were going to take him in round 1 and as early as they did, ideally, you get a trade back, you get a few more picks, which they were able to do. So I think that alone was a pretty big plus. And then getting Jahan Dotson, which for what they're going to use him as, I like the fit better than some of the other receivers at that point.
Really?
I think, you know, valuation wise, it was probably a reach. I liken him to more of a round 2 prospect, but the way I see them using him, maybe that movement Z, you know, you can put him in the slot, you can move him outside if you need him to. He's a pretty twitchy athlete. He can generate displacement with those releases, but he's very explosive in open space. He's very twitchy, you know, and he uses great throttle control. That's one thing that I like about him. Great spot awareness, so he can get behind defensive backs and use that throttle control to manipulate them. And then at the catch point too, I mean, we've seen it, the springy vertical athleticism, the spider-like hands. He's got very good hands, very good instincts. So, you know, I think he can be a complete receiver, a little bit on the smaller side, you know, pretty light frame, and then at the same time not as much experience against press as I would have liked, and he got delayed at times when he did face that. So, you know, I think the biggest thing for him, the biggest thing on the checklist is get a little, you know, add more pounds to your frame, and then, you know, improve your hand usage at the line, because I do think that he might have a learning curve there. But if you're Washington, you know, he has the athletic profile where you can move him around, get him in motion, you know, scheme some touches to him, get him into space where he can really work and use his traits. And then at the same time, if you need him in a one-on-one situation, he has that leaping ability where he can kind of get above that DB, and he has the strong hands, and he has the instincts where he can kind of contort, you know, and kind of flex to make passes that are a little tough for him. So I like the player a lot. Maybe it was a little bit of a reach for me, but, you know, I think Washington, along with Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel and some of the other guys that they have in that receiving core, I think it could be a good fit for him for sure.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. And another pick that I think a lot of fans were kind of upset with, but we kind of saw coming. We saw the writing on the wall when he looked at their visits, and just with rumblings that we'd been hearing, was Brian Robinson from University of Alabama. What does he bring to this team, and how does he differ from Antonio Gibson?
Yeah, so I actually really liked this pick, honestly. Like, I know it wasn't one of the most popular ones. I didn't like the Fedarian Mathis pick, but I did really like the Brian Robinson pick. And I think what Robinson brings is a very good complement to Antonio Gibson. I think what's the one thing that you think Gibson has lacked to this point? You know, out of college, he had more receptions than carries in his final year of college, right? He was never that lead back. Yeah, interesting fact, but I think he had like 37 receptions and 33 carries in his final season. Yeah. It was a big projection taking him that high in itself, and he did show a lot of flashes. But I think right now what we're seeing is that while Antonio Gibson has the natural talent, has the frame density, the contact balance for sure, doesn't quite have the elite instincts and vision and ability to process and kind of react in real time in those congested areas that you'd want from a running back, right? So I think getting Gibson in a more versatile role, similar to what he was used in college, may be beneficial. And then, well, how do you do that? You need a guy, you need kind of that workhorse on those early downs who you can allow that flexibility for Gibson. I think Brian Robinson is a very good fit in that sense. He's around 6'1", I think over 6'1", like 6'1", 5/8" or something, over 220 pounds. So he's a big dude, very physical. One thing that I loved about his style is that he's always forward. Some guys hesitate behind the line. Some guys kind of use too much wasted motion, and then, they kind of eat up time for themselves and allow defenders to close in. Brian Robinson is always moving forward in some sense. Very good footwork. I think he's got great decisiveness, great vision behind the line. And then once he gets going, I mean, he has a full head of steam. He's very tough to bring down. I think he finishes forward, physical, lowers his shoulder, but he can keep those legs churning through arm tackles as well. So he's a little tough to break down one-on-one, and he's got that physicality. But at the same time, he's got some underrated lateral agility too, where he can make guys miss. I think he's a little bit springier in short ranges than people give him credit for. He's a solid receiver out of the backfield. He can pass block, very good pass blocker. So I think with Robinson, you're looking at a very solid running back who's kind of just scratching the surface here, because he was a late bloomer at Alabama, didn't get the surefire number one role until this final season, and he ran away with it literally and figuratively, right? So, I think looking at Brian Robinson, he was my RB3. So I was a big fan of him. I think that he can really fulfill that role that Washington is looking for, maybe even overshadow Antonio Gibson in that pure running back role. But I think it's for the best, because Antonio Gibson was never going to be that elite pure running back. I think the biggest thing with Gibson is that he can catch the ball. You can use him in motion. So just scheme touches his way and use Robinson to be that battering ram on those early downs and keep the chains moving.
We need to get him a bag of Skittles.
Yeah. And another difference, I mean, Antonio Gibson fumbled 6 times last year. Brian Robinson didn't fumble last year at Alabama. Yep. So that's got to play a part.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it was day 3 pick. It was got a lot of talk after the draft. Ron Rivera came out, him and Martin Mayhew, and talked a lot about Percy Butler, a guy that they're really high on. What did you see from him from his film, and how do you think he's going to be contributing come this season?
Yeah, Percy Butler was an interesting pick. It was one where, kind of looking at it, it felt a little bit high to me. And I still think it was a little bit high, but I do really like the upside that he provides. I guess I should lead with that. He's got good size, good length for sure, has a really good frame, but very athletic as well. He's explosive. He's got range on the back end. So you see that utilizing that where he can cover ground, he can flip his hips pretty well. I think with Butler, there's some refinement that he needs to undergo. The frame is a little light, sometimes doesn't have the pure play strength that you want as an enforcer coming downhill. His back pedal, he can be a little high on his back pedal, a little too stiff on transitions. So, but I think that's more technical than, athletic ability. I do think he has the ability to transition. It's just a matter of getting that footwork down and kind of lowering a little bit more in his stance. But, I think the physical traits are there, and you see it flashed on Louisiana tape all day, where he does have the instincts on the back end. One thing that I like about him too is that he can come up into the slot if you need him to. He's fluid enough. He's explosive enough in the short ranges. He's got enough speed to carry guys. It's just some little, detail-oriented things where he needs to refine, but he has flashed that ability to cover guys and manage space. And then at the catch point too, he's flashed ball skills as well. Last year, looking at him, because he had some special teams ability too, some experience there. So I don't thought of him as maybe a round 5, round 6, round 7 guy who maybe plays primarily on special teams early on and then kind of morphs into a greater defensive role. It looks like, taking him in round 4, Washington might have a bigger role on defense in mind for him right away. So I think with Butler, he does offer you some alignment versatility. I don't quite trust him in single high a ton right now, but get him in 2 high, can rotate him into the slot. Him and Cameron Curl could have a lot of upside in those 2 high combinations. I think they'd complement each other very well. With Curl, you're looking at that length, that enforcer ability coming downhill, the physicality, the open field tackling. But then with Butler, a little bit more rangy, a little bit more explosive and agile. So, a lot of different combinations that you can have at the max projection. It was a little too early for me, but if they can get the most out of his traits, they can make it worth it.
Yeah, and Ian, I'm sorry to put you on the spot here, but I'm sure you don't know the schedule by heart or who they're playing against. But if you could, after the draft, looking at how this team got better, how do you think the Washington Commanders, how they'll do against this schedule this season? Is there a game that you're circling that you could say would be maybe a surprise win?
Yeah, so honestly, man, I gotta here. I'm gonna look up the schedule real quick here.
I got you. Week
Yeah.
1, they're going against the Jaguars. Week 2 is the Lions. Week 3 is Philly. Week 4 is Dallas. Week 5 is the Tennessee Titans. Week 6 is the Bears. Packers, week 7. Colts, week 8. Vikings, week 9. Eagles, week 10. Houston Texans, week 11. Falcons, week 12. Then Giants twice. The 49ers, Browns, and Cowboys.
So it sounds like the NFC North and the AFC South are the divisional series that they're going through.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. The AFC South is one where you got the Texans, you got the Jaguars. I think they can beat those teams personally.
Right.
I think they can. The Colts might be a little bit tougher this year. They got Matt Ryan. I think they'll be pretty competitive. The Titans are going to be an interesting one. I don't really know. Ryan Tannehill kind of regressed last year. I think you're kind of relying on their offensive line still has a few holes in it. Can you exploit those and kind of take advantage of that? NFC North, the Vikings. We know how Washington fans feel about Kirk Cousins. That's always a team that's going to be, a little
Love him.
beatable.
Nice guy. Very
They
nice
do.
guy.
They do have talent. I will say the Vikings. I really like
they
their
do.
draft. Lewis Seen was very high on my board. They got him at the end of round 1. They got Andrew Booth in round 2. Was my number 1 overall corner. So if he can stay healthy, he's a potential lockdown corner. So that defense got a lot better in the draft. I would honestly be a little scared to play them right now if I'm Washington. I do think the edge rushing core, Daniil Hunter, Zadarius Smith, they have veterans there. The depth of the rotation might not be quite as strong as I'd like, but I do think, especially with that secondary, buying them time, that could be a dangerous team to play. And we know Kirk Cousins, while he's not that guy who's going to carry you to a Super Bowl or anything, he's the guy who can keep the Vikings competitive. And if it's between Cousins and Carson Wentz, I'm not sold that Wentz can elevate him over that. So it would be a very interesting quarterback duel. I'm really interested to see that one. The Bears, personally, not quite sold on them yet. The offensive line, they really didn't do enough to improve that offensive line. So I can see that being a win for Washington as long as Chase Young is healthy. You got the Lions, who I live in Michigan. I'd like to be optimistic there, but again, I think Washington has the better team at the moment. And
They're
then,
on the rise, though.
They
Lions
are on the
coming
rise.
up.
I will say that. I
Biting
did like
kneecaps.
They're biting kneecaps, man. The trade to get Jameson Williams. I mean, they didn't give up nearly as much as I thought they'd have to get that far. And getting that speed receiver, as long as he's healthy, Jared Goff needs to. They need to change the quarterback. I don't want Jared Goff throwing to Jameson Williams, but if they can fix that, they can be a very good team. Then the Packers, kind of self-explanatory, right?
Did you see the Chargers social media team when their schedule release? Did you see what they did for the Jaguars?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, was it the Urban Meyer?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, that
My
was funny.
goodness.
Yeah.
The Chargers social media team, they prove, man, it's them and everyone else.
Yeah, was it the Browns where they're like, they said that our attorneys said that we needed to remove this clip or whatever because they're facing the Browns
redacted on
that
advice
week.
of our attorneys is what they said.
So good.
Oh my goodness.
One team that you mentioned, I mean, the Vikings. Imagine being a receiver and going over the middle against Harrison Smith and Lewis Sine, who can both of those guys are just physical. That put the fear of God in you. I'll tell you what.
Lewis Sine is a incredible player.
He's fun to watch. He was so fun to watch.
Yeah, I had him valued he was very high on my board. I would have taken him in the teens for sure. In my eyes, he was arguably one of the best safeties. You could make an argument that he was safety 1 over Kyle Hamilton. I think it revolves around player types at the safety position. There's so many different player types. Kyle Hamilton is that guy, 6'4", 220. He's a menace and too high. I can bring him in as the big slot, right? But who would I trust matching a slot receiver in open space more? I would trust Lewis Sine more because I think he's a little more fluid, a little more explosive, top end speed out of his breaks, and he's the effervescent twitch that he moves with. I mean, corrective athleticism is very good for his size. He's not a small guy either. He's 6'2", 200 with 32-inch arms. So, and he's a extremely good processor, very quick to react. He's a playmaker. I was a huge fan of him. So I think Harrison Smith, Lewis Sine, Andrew Booth on one side, locking down receivers. The health is the key for Booth, but the Vikings secondary could be a scary unit for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Now to wrap this up, Ian, I got a couple more questions for you. But let's talk about the 5th rounders here. Sam Howell they took, and he apparently doesn't eat red meat. I'm not sure if that's crazy to you or not, but everyone's flipping out about it. I don't really care. But what do you think of Sam Howell?
Yeah, he's undrafted just off the steak thing, but no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. That's
why he fell, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly why I felt. But no, I mean
the way he talks to De'Ami Brown on the phone. You see that,
Exactly.
man?
Hey, that's actually an interesting element, though. I mean, reuniting with De'Ami Brown. I mean, I
Yeah.
love that. Again, Howell's probably not projected to be the starter, and if Carson Wentz does play better than expected, maybe he kind of extends his time here, and Howell becomes that long-term backup. I don't know. I had Howell as he did not score well on my grading scale. I'll say that my grading scale. I was testing it out this past cycle for quarterbacks. It was the first time I used it, and it was very harsh on the QBs in this class. But Sam Howell, I do think he's got good arm talent. He's got a very clean release, very tight spiral. He can generate velocity and push it down the field. I think one of the stronger arms in the class. He's a steely competitor. I loved his competitive mentality, when he's on the run, lowering his shoulder. But he's pretty tough, too. He can be composed. In the pocket, there's some instances of the mechanics kind of collapsing a little bit. The back foot, he dropped that back foot a lot. The release point can vary, drops his eyes under pressure very often. So, and on top of that, the decision making, the field vision, locking onto his first progression, not showing that he can get through those reads consistently. So, I think we were doing mock drafts. We had Howell going round 2, round 3, all off season, but I think we may have inflated the value just because of the positional value of the quarterback, right? But then at the end, the NFL, they kind of corrected themselves and they're like, yeah, this guy's not worth a day 2 pick, and that's why Howell fell. I do think he has the upside to be a starter. I do think there's a lot of things that you need to refine. You need to improve his progression work. You need to improve his poise in the pocket, and at the same time, the mechanics need to be ironed out a little bit too. And then at that point, what's his ceiling? I think he can be a good starter. Can he be that guy that leads you to a Super Bowl? I'm not so sure, because he produced a lot on the ground, but I don't think his brand of athleticism is not 100% translatable,
right,
as a running quarterback. I think he's more of that guy, he's got the competitive toughness, but he's not the fastest. He's not the most agile guy. He kind of just barrels forward with that dense frame. So, I think if you're Howell, you're not going to be able to rely completely on your athleticism. So you got to improve the soft skills at quarterback. Can he do that? I think he's in a good situation with Washington where he has time to sit and learn under Carson Wentz. Having a familiar target with De'Ami Brown helps even more. So he landed in a good spot. I think at this point, a good developmental quarterback to have. Does he become anything more than that? We'll see. But I think having the time to prove that is good enough.
That bodes the question real fast. Do you think Sam Howell would be taller if maybe he would have eaten, I don't know, a steak throughout childhood or something like that?
I think so, man. I think so.
Yeah.
That honestly, man, that's incomprehensible.
Right.
Man. Never having a steak before. My God, I don't know how you could live like that.
I know. I don't trust him now. He hasn't had a burger and he's never eaten steak. He likes chicken. He's not a vegetarian. He has nothing against it. He just doesn't eat it.
I've had the chicken from Chipotle. I've had the steak from Chipotle.
Yeah, right?
I prefer the steak, man. The steak all the time.
Now, the last question for you: defensive rookie of the year and offensive rookie of the year based on fit. Who do you think will project?
Oh my God, that's a tough one. That's one that I haven't really had time to think about either. I mean, shoot.
Weird, because there's really no quarterbacks this year that you would.
I know, dude. It's insane. Yeah, there's no quarterback. Like, I liked Kenny Pickett. I think that he should have been the first. He was my QB1, so I'm glad that he went to Pittsburgh. I think that's a great story. Do I think he'll be rookie of the year? I'm not sold. They improved a little bit on the offensive line, still could have improved a little bit more, but they got a ton of weapons for him. That's the thing I do like. And I think, you might look at one of their wide receivers, the rookie wide receivers. They got George Pickens, they got Calvin Austin, who I love, but they do have a lot of mouths to feed with Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson. Yeah. So, again, that might work against them. If I had to pick one, one that stands out to me is Drake London in Atlanta. They have a very bare receiving core. And I have to think that, his skill set, I was a pretty big fan of him. He was my wide receiver 3, but he was right there with the other 2, Garrett Wilson and Jameson Williams. So I think with Drake London, 6'4", 219, very physical guy, but at the same time, he's not just a contested catch threat. He's got that quick agility in short ranges where he can kind of make guys miss. He's got efficient route running. He can kind of cut, sink his hips. So I think he can be a 3-level threat. And I think that, that contested catch ability in itself is something that can allow him to be that target funnel like he was at USC. Remember, USC didn't have a ton of weapons outside of him this past year. He was dominant in the early stretch of the season. You look at the Falcons now, who do they have outside of him? Not a ton of guys. I know they just traded for Brian Edwards from Las Vegas.
You're right.
But they're pretty bare there, outside of him and Kyle Pitts, right? So I think Drake London could get a lot of the targets from Marcus Mariota, and maybe if Desmond Ridder eventually takes the starting role, I'm looking at him maybe as that guy. And then if I had to pick defensive rookie of the year, Kayvon Thibodeau stands out to me, as a potential choice. I do like his fit opposite Azeez Ojulari. I think that could be a very good one. Even the Falcons might have another one, right? Arnold Ebiketie. I was a big fan of this guy. He was a first round guy on my board. Very explosive. very bendy, powerful. He's got a hot motor for sure. So I think that you're looking at those guys. And then maybe one of the corners, Derek Stingley in Houston, could be a very going on. He's a phenomenal player. Ahmad Gardner in New York, now that they've kind of upgraded their pass rushing unit, he's going to have the opportunity to benefit from those guys. And then I'll throw in Ceen too, because I love Ceen. I think he's a phenomenal player. Kyle Hamilton in Baltimore as well. I keep naming names that keep popping in my head, but
because there's so many good fits.
There's so many good fits, man. Kyle Hamilton, real quick, perfect fit in Baltimore.
Yeah. What about Sky Moore and Christian Watson?
Sky Moore could be one in Kansas City. I do like how he complements the other size guys that they added. I do think, you look at his releases at the line, violent release guy, he can generate displacement at the drop of a hat, explosive, tough, alpha competitor, right? So Sky Moore, I love that one. Christian Watson, I won't go right away. Year one, I think he needs some seasoning. He's more of an athlete right now. He's shown flashes as a receiver, but he's got to improve his consistency with his hands. He's got to kind of develop his route running. So, I think right now Christian Watson, and he didn't really rely on physicality at the same time. For as big as he is, he doesn't have an overwhelming physicality element. So there might be a little bit of an acclimation period in the NFL. But I think, 2 to 3 years down the road, could be a very good player. Year one, I would probably rule him out.
If anybody can get the most out of him, though, it's that old boy out there in Green Bay.
Yeah,
for sure.
All right, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Ian. It was a pleasure to be able to break down this draft with you after so many episodes of pre-gaming up for it, all the leading up to it. The suspension was building. I'm glad that we were able to break this down with you, brother. Hope you have a great night. And before you go, just wanted to plug your social media handles.
Yes, sir. So you can follow me at Ian_Cummings_9 on Twitter. Pro Football Network is at PFN365. Thank you guys for having me. I always appreciate it.
Of course, Ian. It was a pleasure, brother. Enjoy your weekend and get back to that vacation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, everybody. We just spoke with the man, Mr. Ian Cummings for PFN365.
We just had two of the best draft experts to break things down and the schedule. That you could possibly have.
Well, let's go back to another draft expert for this next question, and this one's from Big Tony Shiver. So, Reed, what are your thoughts on how the bye week falls in the schedule this year?
It's tough. I understand why people would like that. I mean, week 14, I do think it's weird being sandwiched between the two Giants games, but to me, it all depends. Like if we start getting hit with injuries early or by midseason, then it's like, man, that's going to really come back to that could possibly bite us. But if we're winning and we're playing good and we have a chance at the end of the year, then this is going to be huge. I mean, when I was just on Doug's show, Keith and some of these guys were talking about how the NFL kind of treats Thursday night games almost as a bye week. So, because you have 10 days off anyway. So that kind of having those early on is good for us. So it makes it a little bit easier. The guys get a little bit of rest, but then you look at teams like Kansas City, probably have like 5 Thursday night games. Like they have 6 bye weeks this year. Like, I don't know, but no, it's tough, man. But I can see it. It can either be really good thing having the bye week there, or a really bad thing depending on the circumstances. It's all kind of just luck of the draw.
Yeah, I absolutely love it, Tony. But that week 14, I know this is kind of the new age thing because 14 wasn't really an eligible week under the 17-game schedule. But I mean, under the 17-week schedule with the NFL before. So now with 18 games, they can move to 14, and I absolutely love it because I talked about it earlier. You got the Cowboys, the Browns, and then you have what was the other team that I said?
The Giants.
The Giant. No. There's another.
Talking about after the bye?
The 49ers. Yes. Yeah. So that stretch of 3 games is very, very tough, and it will come down to most likely to the playoffs. So having that bye week there at 14 gives you so much time to be able to prep for those games because you have the Giants before the bye and the Giants after the bye. You don't need to really game plan for a team that you just played. You already know what happened in that game. You can adjust things. You don't need to game plan for it. So for that bye week, those 7 days, Rivera and company can really hammer in on the 49ers, can really hammer in on the Cowboys and the Browns. That way we can kind of see what Deshaun Watson and company will do. So I love that week 14 bye, but I also want to say that Thursday night game against the Browns, I love it as well because that gives, just like you said, Reed, 10 days for Rivera and company to be able to look at Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay offense. That's their next matchup. What do you think, Hall?
Yeah, I actually like the week 14 bye as well. I definitely would rather have it later in the season as opposed to early in the season just because obviously people are going to be like, oh, they play 20 straight weeks starting from training camp or September or whatever it is up until the bye. But you could also look at it as if they had the bye week early, well, they get the bye week early, then they got 18, 20, whatever it is, weeks straight of football.
If you go to the Super Bowl, it's a long time after that.
Exactly, especially if this team is who we think they are, they're going to be playing in December and January as well, like late into January, as far as the playoffs go, at least round one of the playoffs. So I like the Week 14 bye, and especially because the last three of the four games are at home. So you get the bye week, and then you get 3 home games out of the last quarter of the season. So if, like I said, if this team is who we think they are, and they're going to be in contention, what better way to come off a bye week into that last little like playoff stretch to have 3 home games against teams that obviously are a little bit hard, but like I said, if they're playing up to their potential, are definitely beatable. And who's to say that if they go on a little heater at the end of the season after that bye, they get rested up for the playoffs, and who knows what can happen after that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But let's keep it with you, Reed. I'm going to haul for this next question from Jeff Miles. What's one game that Washington should lose and win versus one game they should win and lose?
One they should lose and win. I'll go what we just talked about earlier with Trevor and with Ian as well. That Vikings game. I definitely think obviously they're really, really talented on offense. Dalvin Cook is a top 3, top 5 back in the league. Justin Jefferson, obviously top receiver. Adam Thielen, one of the best route runners, best hands in the league. A great number 2 or 1A if you want to call him that, 1B. So they definitely have a great passing game. Tight end is really good as well. Kirk Cousins coming back is going to be the big storyline there, obviously. But I definitely think that we've seen Kirk Cousins when he has that pressure in his face, when he's getting that interior pressure coming up the middle, when he's rattled a little bit in the pocket, they can have one of those down games where he'll start off slow and all of a sudden in the fourth quarter he'll just start compiling because they're down. So that's one game I definitely think that they should lose, but they could definitely end up winning. And one that they should win and might lose. I'll go week 1 or week 2. I'll go week 1 just because new team as far as like the coach goes, new head coach. Doug Peterson, actually, obviously, he knows Carson Wentz pretty well, coached him in those Philly years. So he's going to know like what defense to put against him and stuff like that. And obviously they got pretty solid receivers. And like you said, Trevor Lawrence carved up that Colts defense, who was supposed to be so spectacular in week 18 last year, even though everyone says it's Carson Wentz's fault. But if you watch that game, Trevor Lawrence was covering him up on the ground and through the air. So I definitely think that they're not going to be a pushover like everyone thinks they are. Do I think they're going to win that game? Yes. But I could definitely see them taking the L in that game.
That's a good one. I really like that. But I'll go the one that they'll win that they maybe could lose, that everyone is picking for them to lose, is the Titans at home. Obviously, A.J. Brown gone. They're very run-heavy, and that is typically where Washington is strong at. And so maybe that is a game that they can get in there, maybe get some opportunistic turnovers from Ryan Tannehill and company, and be able to take Derrick Henry out of the game by scoring a lot of points. So I think that's one. The other one, I guess, is the Cowboys, that they should win, but they might lose, is the Cowboys, because the Cowboys are just terrible. They should beat the hell out of the Cowboys. What do you think, Reed?
So you took I was going to go with the Titans too, but I have another one. So a game that they should lose, but I think that they could pull off is against the Indianapolis Colts. Look at this. Is a revenge game, man. They're still, Chris Ballard and Jim Irsay are still talking about this Carson Wentz thing.
Crazy.
And Ron Rivera is going to go out there and get these guys fired up to go play this. I mean, he's probably offended at this point. He's like, all right, guys, keep my quarterback's name out of your mouth. Like, stop doing this. So I think that they'll go in there. Carson will be ready. But the Colts, they're a very good team. As we saw, they were the best team in football for a stretch last year. So will they? I don't know, but I could see them.
How are they the best team in football? It makes no sense.
Right. I don't understand it at all, but it's almost like they were like the most complete team, Who would have thought?
Weird.
Yeah. But then a game that we should win that we could lose. I mean, kind of like you guys, I guess I'll go with I'm going to go with week number 1 because I really think Trevor Lawrence is that talented. And I really respect Doug Peterson as a head coach. And look, they've got some good running backs. They've got solid receivers. They've revamped their offensive line. They added some pieces on defense and maybe come out flat. Maybe we think we'll win. I don't think it'll happen, but I wouldn't be too shocked, as we talked about earlier.
Yeah, the Jaguars, I made a joke earlier about their wide receiver room not being solid, right? But you have to look at it with the Bears compared to, and obviously the Bears would absolutely love the Jaguars wide receiver room. But the next question is on Twitter from Commander OC. Reed, I'll stick it with you. He says, happy Friday the 13th. Thank you, OC. What say you about the Albert Breer rumors regarding the Terry McLaurin contract conversation not having even been started?
False. The Diesel's going to say that is all false. 100%. He does not know what he's talking about. Do you think that they really haven't tried to reach out to Terry McLaurin? They have. I guarantee it. That's false. He's wrong. Get him out of there.
I'm not really sure about Albert Breer. I would probably give more credence to what Albert Breer says more so than the local media, given with the circumstances permitting around here. Do I think that they've even started? What probably happened is they reached out. They're kind of looking at each other with the numbers aspect, and there's just nowhere really to go until they have the money in the bank when Landon Collins' June 1st designation is actually dropped. So that way they have that $20 million in cap space. Sean on Twitter earlier talked about how at the moment they have $9 million in cap space, the Commanders do. So once that Landon Collins goes through that $11 million, that bumps them to 20, and that'll give them the money, the cushion to be able to do the contract extension. And that's what I'm sure the talks will be really centered around, and it's more towards like training camp is when we'll probably be getting that contract. What do you think, Cole?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Martin Mayhew was asked the question, and he already said that they've reached out to Terry's people. They've had preliminary talks. So I mean, that could mean anything. Honestly, that could mean, hey,
like, hey, what's up, man?
What's up? Hey, how you guys doing? You guys want to stay? Cool. Okay, we'll get back to
Hey,
you later.
man. Yeah. Do you guys like money? Oh, you do? Sick. Talk to you soon.
Right. So, I mean, as far as it like not being started, everyone already knew that it wasn't really going to pick up until after June 1st, with the target to be around the beginning of training camp. So that's like early August or like mid-August, whatever that may be. So I'm not really that worried about it. Now, if we go into the season and it's still not done, or if we get through training camp and it's still not done, then you can start to talk about, okay, now we're getting worried. What's going to happen? What are you going to do going forward? But as of right now, it's still May. We're still waiting for that June 1st designation with Landon Collins to free a little bit more things up. So, yeah, like I said, come August, come training camp, we don't see anything that first week or two of training, or that first week of training camp. And then if you get closer to week 1, like early September, you still don't have nothing done. That's whenever, the hair, all the ears, all the eyebrows can start getting raised up.
Right.
Yeah.
See, I would almost guarantee that they've talked about it verbally. Maybe they haven't sent anything written and like
Right,
had
they
like
know
actual
what money they're gonna have
negotiations.
and not have.
Right.
coming
But
up.
I guarantee they've talked about it with Terry's agent and stuff and be like, what do you guys think? What would you think of this? What are you looking for?
Yeah, they're just trying to stoke up some conversation, but maybe
Yeah.
there is some truth to it. Don't know. But the next question on Twitter is from our guy T-Mac. Thank you, brother. Hope you're doing all right. His question is, what area do you think outsiders like media/experts are sleeping on when it comes to the Commanders? Could be a position or position group besides quarterback.
I got it. So yeah, as you guys know, there was a tweet yesterday, I believe, on Twitter where a guy, I verified, I don't even remember who he was. He's not that important, but he ranked the NFC East offensive lines, and he had the Commanders ranked last. No, we are right there at the top. It's between us and the Eagles. I'm giving it to us just because we don't have a star player right now without Brandon Sheriff. We have this team. This offensive line is so good together. They play so well. The cohesion is fantastic, and they're solid all across the board. They were solid last year with playing their third string center. They're going to be fine if they stay healthy. They're the best offensive line in this division.
Yeah, I think it's wide receiver, T-Mac, and the reason why I say that is a lot of people are looking at Diami Brown is almost like not even considering him in the wide receiver rotation, even though he was a third-round drafted talent. He's very, very good, especially meets what Carson Wentz brings. And then Curtis Samuel coming back from injury. So I think that that whole wide receiver group is just
People forget about Curtis Samuel.
Not giving enough respect because we brought up before that a better quarterback will elevate the rest of your offense, right? And that's what will happen with the wide receiver. So as much as we've been downplaying Diami Brown and his what he's going to bring and what Curtis Samuel brings, you're really going to see this wide receiver group blossom with an actual quarterback, and hopefully he could stay healthy. So if I'm going to pick one, it's the wide receiver group.
Yeah, I got to go offensive line just because I'm with Reed that a lot of people are, I don't know, people like to use PFF for like to make their arguments, but whenever someone else is using the PFF as their argument, they downplay like, oh, no, it's just PFF.
Oh yeah, I don't see it like that. They're not the be all end all.
I test, not the numbers. Okay,
right.
Whatever. But so I would go to the offensive line, and also, how many people I've heard in the call now like 106, so like the B Mitch and JP Finley show, or even Grant and Danny show, that are like national guys, not really like plugged in or that really locked in on what Washington is doing. How they've been as far as like they just look from the outside in as far as like, oh, it's 7-10, bad quarterback play out. They're probably bums. But like everyone said, they lose Brandon Sheriff. People say they lose Eric Flowers, and they just kind of assume that, oh, well, they lost two really good pieces on the offensive line that their offensive line is already bad, and it's kind of just like, well,
they need to draft a tackle at 11 then.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
if you really dove into the numbers and really watched the games last year, you would see that we were down to our third and fourth string guys at some points, and they were still dominating guys up front as far as the run game and pass blocking as well. So I definitely think that people sleep on his O-line, and they, especially with Chase Rouillet coming back in the middle to really fortify the middle like that, it's going to be
Sam Cosme in year 2.
Yeah, and to your point, guys, Leno overall grade last season at left tackle, 81.2, 12th overall in the NFL.
And he doesn't get nearly enough respect ever by national media.
Yeah, now I just want to apologize to Scott Hartley and our guy Rob Tubman. Both of them some supplemented questions, and they're essentially the same one that Jeff Miles asked. One surprising win, one surprising loss, essentially in the season. So I apologize to you guys. But let's wrap this up with Scott Hartley's one more question he had for us. Oi! In the UK, Scott asks Hall, if I may, I've watched the interview with Cole Holcomb and Julie on Commander's YouTube. He seems set on wanting the Mike linebacker role. Do you see this as a fit?
Well, my seat buddy for life. Do I see it being a fit? Look, they're obviously around Cole Holcomb a lot more than we are. They see him a lot more than we do. Me personally, I would add another veteran guy in that room to kind of be the guy, but if Cole happens to take it over, so be it. Let him play it out. But I would love for it to be a long-term solution because I love Cole Holcomb. I love how he's grown every single year he's been here. I love how he's kind of getting more and more recognition as far as like his play and like him as being a real kind of like team guy and a team leader in and out on the field. But like I said, I would much rather have a vet guy in there and let them. If Cole Holcomb takes it from him, I would love that even more. But yeah, I want a vet. I want a solid vet in there.
I got you. I do think that Cole Holcomb, that is a good fit for the Mike linebacker spot. He has all the tools necessary in order to get the job done. It's just progressing up until that point to be there. And out of necessity last season, I think he did grow into it. Now, Ron Rivera's comments might be a little controversial in that aspect. You could probably pick things apart. But maybe he just didn't want to get ahead of himself, didn't want to tip what he was going to do, his hand and everything. So I like the fit a lot with Cole. He has everything that he needs to do with it. It's just being able to him staying healthy is my biggest concern with the linebacking core because there's not that many. But I definitely, Scott, without a doubt, Cole Holcomb can play Mike. He has all the tools.
Yeah. I mean, especially, I mean, you just look at him. I mean, he's 6'1", 240. I mean, that guy can get up there and he can play the run. He's athletic. He ran a 4.5 140 when he was coming out. I mean, he's produced. He's a tackling machine. He's gotten better each year. I think he could be a very good inside linebacker, of course.
Yeah, and I hope Cole and Jamin do their own like little white man can't jump, like team up and just start whooping everyone's butt. You know what I'm saying?
Jamin Davis's hairline is crazy, man. That guy has not lost a thing of hair in his entire life. If anything, he's gained more. It goes down to his eyebrow, man. So if he raises his eyes like that, I guarantee his eyebrows get caught. Like it's he's got the smallest forehead I've ever seen in my life.
Absolutely. All right, everyone, that's going to wrap us up for this show. Speak of Jamin's eyebrows. We will see you guys again on Monday. Please comment on the YouTube video. We want to hear from you guys. What do you think about the schedule release? We're going to actually do our predictions on Monday, but we're also going to add something to that, a little fun with the jerseys. So we'll see you guys again on Monday. I'm Kyle.
I like steak and hamburgers, and I'm Hall.
Yeah, come on, baby. This is we baby, man. Please, baby.
and Reed is Lil Wayne. All right, everybody. Have a good weekend. Be safe. And we will see you guys again on Monday. Washington football. Woo! Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Kyle. I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching. And if you liked what you saw, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you get notified when anything new is uploaded to the channel. Also, we just launched theburgundyzone.com. You can go there and find all of our latest news, articles, and the latest episodes that are uploaded. Again, we also have the Discord chat server, where all of our VIP folks are in, like Andy Burrows, Scott Hartley, Sergio Martin is in there as well. Don't miss out on the Discord chat server. Go and check that out. Until next time, everybody, Washington football. Woo!